Going back to Luke 22 and 30, he says that what? Let's start at 28. Ye are they which have continued with me in my temptations, and I appoint unto you a kingdom as my Father hath appointed unto me, that ye may eat and drink at my table, kingdom, and sit on throne, judging the 12 tribes of Israel. When you look up this word for table, all right, we're going to sit directly at the table with Yahweh Shai, judging the matters of the whole entire planet Earth. Okay, the word table is trapeza. Trapeza, a table on which food is placed, an eating place. Now we know that we're going to eat and drink with him, but more importantly, this table symbolizes the table in which the priest sat, handling the affairs of the nation of Israel, taking in all of the increase, the goods, the first fruits that will come to the temple would all be given unto the priest. So it says the table in the temple at Jerusalem on which the consecrated loaves were placed, right? And it says the table or stand of a money changer, where he sits exchanging different kinds of money for a fee and paying back with loans or deposits. Now, when we go to the book of Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter and the 12th verse, now remember, these are the blessings. We got to remember to tap into these blessings. Yeah, we know the curses are from Deuteronomy 28:15 on down, but when you read the blessings, you get insight into what we are getting ready to inherit. Now, one of the things that Yahweh Shai said that we just read is that we're going to sit at his table with him, judging the affairs of the 12 tribes of Israel, setting everything in order, being at the forefront, all right, of establishing forever in paradise. Deuteronomy 28:12, Yahweh shall open unto thee his good treasure, the heaven to give the rain unto thy land in his seasons, and everything is going to flourish, everything is going to be on point, won't be any drought, right? The seasons are going to come in perfection, everything will flourish, no GMOs, right? And to bless all the work of thy hand, and thou shalt lend unto many nations, and thou shalt not borrow. Read that in the NLT. It says you will lend to many nations, but you will never need to borrow from them. So when you understand the kingdom of heaven and being a priest after the order of Melchizedek, which is Yahweh Shai, we are going to be the bankers of the nation of Israel. We're going to be the bankers of the whole world. But see, we're going to deal in righteousness. And we will be able to lend to heathen. We will be able to deny loans. We will be at the forefront of how everything flows throughout the whole four corners of the earth. The Lord shall make thee the head and not the tail, and thou shalt be above only, and thou shalt not be beneath. See, and this is what's promised unto us under Yahweh Shai's kingdom. Joint heirs of what? Being at the forefront of creation. Being at the forefront of setting everything back in its proper perspective, putting everything where it needs to be. All right, from trees to, everything that you can imagine. And we're going to do this in new bodies.
All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I would like to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles, and the elders of GMS who rule well, teach well, being great examples to his younger brothers. And peace and blessings and salutation to the hopeful elect out there pushing his word and truth and in sincerity across the four winds in the name of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shah, Bahashem, Rakakadash, pushing to get up out of here. Shalom to the hopeful elect, the believers, the listeners, whom have came back to the obedience of the scriptures through faith in Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shah. Now, what I want to get into with this lesson, the devil at work, all right, the pollution of the American military, and I found, a pretty good video, of Chris Hedges, and this little chick that he's interviewing, and she's going in, she's breaking it down, confirming, a lot of things that, I was speculating on in the spirit, concerning with the elites and how they move, the American military, okay, as we're coming into these times. Matter of fact, let's get this, before we get into that. Okay, we're in a time of everything coming out. Okay, let's go here. The spirit is really, exposing Esau, Edom on another level, before the Lord judges this man. Okay, but that's why when you go to, I better get this in Habakkuk, get this in the book of Habakkuk, man. Because one thing about it, people will not know. Okay, people cannot say that they didn't know about the wickedness of Esau. Okay, as you people are getting ready to take this sea hip, all right, bending the knee to the beast. Well, you're bending the knee to pure wickedness, man, to pure rebellion. Okay, the Lord has made it obvious that this man is the devil that the Bible speaks of. All right, this man is a pedo Satanist. Okay, he destroys the earth. Okay, he's genocidal. Everything that the Lord hates. He's proud. You see, he's trying to replace the Most High with technology. Okay, blasphemous. All of it is being put out in the open, man. So you people take that seat here. That's why the judgment gonna be so harsh, man, because you're siding with everything that the Lord hates, man. Because the Lord, all right, has Esau on trial. Like the scripture say, it will be an inquisition made of this devil, man. So you go to the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2, and verse 16. It says, "Thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory." Okay, for the longest, you looked at, especially America. America was, this standard of righteousness. The American military looked at it as the world police. They was coming, to save the day, from the wicked tyrant. They was coming to save the locals from the wicked tyrant, leadership. There was a narrative and the propaganda behind the U.S. military. The U.S. military is there, saving the kids, handing out bikes and toys while, taking down the villain, okay, tyrannical, leadership and his terrorist regime, okay. That was the glory, the national anthem, Whitney Houston with that windsuit, okay, and then, and the headband singing the national anthem, like, hell yeah, America. You see? But when you really get into it, man, America's military, which is nothing but the mercenaries of the elites, okay, is the biggest terror organization, the most organized, all right, financed terror organization the planet Earth has ever seen, and really, hey, because you really can stop saying the greatest military ever. It's the greatest terrorist group ever when you go into the American military. Okay, it's the most sophisticated, financed terror group that Earth has ever seen. Okay, because of it serves the agenda of the elites. Okay, and you look at the track record of the American military, man, it's like, God damn, and then just how polluted, how much pollution, that the American military causes in the earth, man. And we're gonna get into these things, Ratazar. But let's go here. Uh, let's go to the book of Mark, chapter 4, and get into AMP as well. You know, let's get the book of Mark, chapter 4, in the AMP. So you go here to the book of Mark, chapter 4, and verse 22. Okay, and it reads, "For there is nothing hidden except to be revealed, nor has anything been kept secret, but that it would come to light. That is, things are hidden only temporarily until the appropriate time comes for them to be known." Okay, so this devil, for a time, he wasn't. There was a time when Esau wasn't revealed, man. Esau was able to maneuver, and the world looked to this man as a hero. Okay, the man looked, the world looked to Esau, Edom as the way, the light bearer, the man that got it figured out, the man, that's taking society to, the utopia. Esau had the path to utopia, man. But then you really get into what this man has been doing, what he's doing, what he's trying to do, man. And he's pure evil, man. He's pure wicked, man. Okay, the absolute worst heathen to ever be in power, man. Okay, and all these things are being revealed. And like I say, you people, you Israelites have no cloak for your sin as you're getting ready to bend the knee to this man. Okay, you Israelites have been warned, okay, day in and day out about this devil, man. And the Lord got it all the way out there with this guy, man. The Lord got this man all the way out there, man. That's why he has certain, specialists and, experts that have certain insiders that, have went rogue, and just telling everything, man. The Lord did that for the prophets, man. You see, because they don't have the truth, but they have this insider information, because of their careers and expertise, and they've been around the inner workings of this system. Okay, and you got like I say, you got an uptick on investigation journalism, investigative journalism that's on the uptick. Okay, it's the Lord doing that, man. Okay, and the prophets are able to filter these things in the spirit. Okay, and expose this man for what he is, man, the goddamn fraud, man. Okay, yeah, niggas around here voting, and none of that matters, man. These niggas are fraud, man. Democracy a fraud. The economy a fraud. Okay, your military fraud. Okay, whatever entertainment fraud. Everything you can think of is a fraud, man. In this man's kingdom. You see? So let's go from there. Let's get this real quick. Let's get a couple more. And then we'll get into the video. So let's get this. And everything that the Lord, said what happened is happening, man. The wicked will be revealed in this time. And it's that time, right? Because the Lord, all right, is going to end this man's rulership. Okay? So right at the end of this man's rulership, everything is coming out, man. Okay? Now let's go here. It's the book second Esdras. It's the book of second Esdras, chapter 6, and verse 19. It says, I started 18. It said, and it said, behold, the days come and I will begin to draw nigh. Okay, so the Lord is drawing nigh because he's getting ready to judge, and he's getting ready to have mercy on the remnant of his people, man. So the time where Yahushua is not, because he's going to judge through Yahushua, and he's going to deliver through Yahushua, man. It says, and to visit them that dwell upon the earth, man. And for Esau, it's not going to be a good visit, man. You Edomites, man. Yahushua is going to embarrass you, Edomites, man. Okay? As the clown that you are, man. Okay? It says, and I will begin to make inquisition of them what they be that have hurt unjustly with their unrighteousness, and when the affliction of Zion shall be fulfilled. Okay? So there's an inquisition being made, which is a scrutiny, an investigation. Okay? Like Esau's going through a intense, all right, scrutiny, man. Okay? By his wickedness, man. You see, this man's being challenged on every level, man. Even with some of these reporters, man, they be asking, a lot of things be set up, that we see, man. But, I believe that the spirit be causing glitches, okay, in Esau's propaganda, man. Because even some reporters, man, they, they be asking certain questions, man, that hit home. You be like, damn. You see? Well, this man is being questioned, called out at every turn. Okay? It says, and we'll begin to make inquisition of them what they be that have hurt unjustly with their unrighteousness, and when the affliction of Zion shall be fulfilled. So the end of our captivity, okay, is at hand. Okay? The end of our captivity is at hand. So the end of our captivity means the beginning of Esau's captivity, man. Okay? So the Lord is packing this age up, man. He's ending this age, the age of Esau, which is the end of our captivity. Okay? Everything is being put out there about this devil, man. Like I said, Esau's on trial. He's on the stand, man. And there's nothing but witness after witness. It's just a big arena full of witnesses, man. Okay? Pointing at this nigga, man. Telling everything that this nigga been doing, man. Okay? Verse 20 says, and when the world that shall begin to vanish, and it's talking about this age. Esau's age is vanishing, man. That's why he don't have it. He don't have that first step like he used to, man. He's losing it. Okay? The Lord is drawing back his ability to rule, man, because he's at the end. And the Lord is pulling back his ability to rule. Okay? Because it was the Lord that had this nigga propped up the whole time. Gave this nigga the sword, allowed this nigga, to tap into technology, enchantments. You see, witchcraft, the Lord allowed Esau, okay, to excel on the left hand and prosper in wickedness, man. Okay? Just so he can be an example, okay, of the outcome of rebellion, man. For Pharaoh, for the Lord told Pharaoh, for this same purpose have I raised thee up, man. The Lord lift this nigga up, man. And now the Lord is getting ready to draw back, man, and judge this nigga, man. Okay? It says that when the world that shall begin to vanish away shall be finished. This place is finished. Esau is finished, man. He's at the end. Okay? Hey, we shouldn't take nothing in this world serious like that, man. This place is done, man. It said, then when I shall show these tokens, the book shall be open before the firmament. That's the scriptures. The firmament going to the atmosphere with the satellites, man, because how this word being taught via the internet. So the Lord is opening the understanding of the Bible through the internet. The book shall be open for the firmament. And when you go into the understanding of the scriptures, man, Esau, okay, is the main culprit, man. The Bible puts this nigga on trial, man, and judges this man. Okay? And watch scripture about what? The judgment. It said, then the books will open. Okay? Because within the books is the judgment of Esau Edom. There's the accusation against this devil. And then there's a judgment. You see? And Yahweh Shai, he's going to come and execute that judgment, man. Okay? It says, and they shall see all together, man. So the man, Esau Edom, the Lord had this man on a global trial. Because the earth is crying out against the devil, man. You see, like even I say in Iran, you had the younger population, leaning towards, Western culture and, wanting, to become modern, and you see, well then as America has launched, these attacks on Iran, man, that whole culture has organize against Esau, man. They see the devil for what he is. See, the younger generation only knew Esau from the internet, from social media. They look at, how the world is operating, under this facade of, okay, and you see? But then when they seen the devil horns up close, man, they was like, man, nah, man, they want that nigga head now, man. And there's a global outcry against this nigga, man. Just like Sodom and Gomorrah, man. It's an outcry against these devils, man. Okay, but the outcry that the Lord is concerned about is a remnant of his people that's crying out against the devil, man. And that's what's causing the Lord to move. You see? So let's go here, man. Like I said, it's a pretty good video. Fair use, fair use. I'm not making any monetary gains, for educational purposes only. Fair use, fair use. So let's listen to this, man. Cause I'm listening to it, I'm like, man, this nigga here, man. And the title of the video is why the U.S. military is the Earth's greatest enemy. All right, and it's on the Chris Hedges YouTube channel. Okay, so it's like from 8 days ago, so it's fairly new. The Chris Hedges YouTube channel. Okay, why the U.S. military is the Earth's greatest enemy. All right, the chick Abby Martin. Okay, that she's gonna go in.
You can.
No. And sadly, you're not seeing
Enemy. Second. Earth's Greatest Enemy, second feature film project by Abby Martin. Pentagon, the world's single largest institutional polluter, spews carbon, contaminates water, and spreads toxins across vast landscapes while being exempt from climate agreements. The film focuses on an often unexamined aspect of the war industry, which not only eliminates human lives through violence, but also through ecological devastation. The U.S. military is the single largest consumer of fossil fuels on the planet at 270,000 barrels of oil a day. This amounts to 55 million metric tons of CO2 annually, more than 150 countries. The United States is the only country which has some 1,000 installations and bases dotted throughout the globe. Russia has 9, China has 1. These military outposts are equipped with thousands of vehicles and aircraft. The U.S. Air Force alone is larger than the next 5 biggest air powers combined. It would take the average American driver over 40 years to burn as much fuel as a single flight of a Boeing Pegasus. The U.S. flies more than 600 of these tankers, triple the rest of the world combined. The direct emissions from warships, vehicles, warplanes, tanks, and military bases do not include the indirect emissions emitted by weapons manufacturers, suppliers for the military, and the machinery that extracts raw materials in countries such as the Congo that are vital to the military machine.
But then this nigga blamed the cows for global warming. You and your your Toyota Corolla is the problem. Okay? And the American military is an energy intense, system, man. And that's why they need control of so much oil as well. She's gonna get into it, but you just listen to the first few minutes and it's like, God damn. Okay? The American military machine, uses up a lot of energy, man. And that's the war machine that protects the interests of the elites. Okay, that's why so much investing into it, because it protects the interests of the elites, man. Okay, but there's been a disruption in it as of late. You see, which got Esau in scramble mode, man. Okay, well, it's just funny how this man pushes the cows are the problem, but you look at, the destructive and pollutive, okay, nature of the U.S. military, man. It's crazy.
If these indirect emissions are factored into the carbon footprint, the Pentagon CO2 output is at least 3 times higher, over 165 million metric tons a year. Joining me to discuss her film, Earth's Greatest Enemy, is Abby Martin. So what is it that propelled, it's a great film, and we got to make sure we tell viewers how to link to it. But what is it that propelled you to kind of look at the military from this angle?
I think for a lot of us who have been witnessing the ecocidal nature of U.S. imperialism and the destruction that it brings around the world, it's been so obvious for so long that when you destroy landscapes, when you mass murder people, those toxins, the carcinogens that are unleashed from the constant bombing, the pulverization of concrete, this carbon dense material that we've seen in Gaza, it's so obvious, Chris. I've always been an environmentalist. And so as an anti-imperialist journalist, it's always just been such an obvious link. And I was always so curious why no one had synthesized this material, and not just the emissions, but the totality of this gargantuan subject, because it's not just emissions, it's really everything. Every base is a story of not only legacy contamination, but ongoing contamination with the waves of militarization that we see today. So I was really upset that this wasn't a mainstream issue, that this wasn't incorporated in the narratives with mainstream environmentalism. And instead, you saw people like Elizabeth Warren talking about greening a global military empire, which we know is completely unsustainable and uninhabitable with the viability of a planet that sustains human life.
Our brain and nervous system are the most complex networks in existence. At Nashoba Neurology.
Well, and they don't just poison those abroad.
And real quick, I had just looked it up. She spoke about carcinogens. Carcinogens, it's a lot. Well, yeah, just what are they? Let's So just look it up real quick, man. You just see how harmful, and this all comes from the American military operating, all the militaries of the world, because they have the same, weaponry, so but see, the earth has been militarized because of America, man. The earth has an uptick, do an uptick in military because of America, man. Okay, let's see this. Yeah, so you look at carcinogens. I said, how do carcinogens harm the earth? It says carcinogens harm the earth by poisoning ecosystems, altering plant genetics, and collapsing food chains. You see? And there's things that this devil intentionally poisoned, and there's just things that's polluted just because, how this nigga runs the world. He intentionally poisons things, and then there's a lot of things that's poisoned and affected just by how this man operates and runs the world, man. His technology, his industrial footprint, man. It says while humans usually associate carcinogens with cancer, these toxic substances act as a severe environmental pollutant that degrades soil, water, and wildlife. Okay, water contamination and ecotoxicity. When chemical carcinogens like benzene, arsenic, and industrial solvents leak into waterways, they devastate aquatic, environments, suffocating aquatic life. Carcinogenic compounds can cause symptoms, systemic organ damage, respiratory failure, and reproductive mutations in fishes and amphibians. Algae blooms, certain industrial byproducts mimic nutrients, triggering massive toxic algae blooms that deplete oxygen in water and create aqua dead zones, man. Fish can't even, just pulling the oxygen out the water, man. Okay? This man's industrial footprint, man, is destroying the earth, man. You know? Because America, no one thing that one of the number one things that America produces is chemicals. Okay, look it up. It says many heavy carcinogens like cadmium, lead, and hexavalent chromium do not break down easily in nature. The latter of toxins, tiny organisms absorb these chemicals from contaminated soil and water. As large predators eat smaller ones, the concentration of the carcinogen multiplies. By the time it reaches apex predators like eagles, bears, and large fish, the toxicity levels can cause mass infertility or death, man. This nigga gotta get out of here, man. You know, this man has to get out of here, man. Okay? And this is a nigga that jump on TV and tell the world what they need to do next. Okay? And tell this country about their leader, and you know, we gotta get this nigga out of here. You know, there's no one that's more terroristic than Esau Edom than the elites. The biggest terrorists to the earth are the elites of Esau Edom. Okay? And they created, you know, this terror machine called the American military. It has nothing to do with protecting the rights and defending the homeland of America. Nothing. No war was to defend American homeland. Okay? Or the citizen. It says carcinogenic agricultural runoff, such as certain pesticides and heavy metals, settles directly into the earth's crust, killing microbes. These toxins destroy the beneficial fungi and bacteria that keep soil fertile. Plants absorbing these chemicals suffer from cellular damage, disrupted photosynthesis, and genetic mutations that drastically reduce crop and forest resilience. Severe air pollution. Carcinogens released as airborne particles such as diesel exhaust, soot, and asbestos physically alter the atmosphere. Smog and acid rain. Airborne chemical carcinogens react with sunlight and water vapor from forming toxic smog and acid rain that chemically burn trees, canopies, and acidify pristine lakes. Man, this is crazy work with Esau. How Esau got, man, it's just a ripple effect of wickedness, man, and poor leadership, man. Okay? But this nigga jump on, you know, the camera and tell the world what to do next, man.
Remember the bombing in Bosnia when I covered the war, and those craters, nothing ever grew because there was uranium. Those were uranium depleted munitions. I drove on my way to Basra, where I was eventually captured by the Iraqi Republican Guard, up the highway of death. It was coated in white dust from Iranian depleted munitions that, of course, sickened and killed many of the service members who had to go clean it up. But you also talk about Camp Lejeune, that these poisons are in that sense, the military is non-discriminatory. They're quite happy to poison their own as well. We didn't even talk about the trash dumps in places like Iraq.
Exactly. I mean, you look at something as cynically exploited as the 9/11 first responders. I mean, these were lauded as the heroes of 9/11, slapped over all the propaganda to activate that reptile brain after 9/11. And what was done to them? basically left to die. I mean, denied healthcare every step of the way. These are the 9/11 first responders that were digging through the asbestos-laden toxic dust. So of course, the service members are completely expendable in the eyes of the ruling class and the military brass. I mean, every base is a story of toxic dumping with the soldiers as the lab rats. We saw this during the waves of irradiation with nuclear, the extractivism, with the Cold War. I mean, using literal US soldiers as lab rats with the nuclear testing. And today, the burn pits. And of course, you mentioned Camp Lejeune. This was the worst water contamination event in American history. And for years, the military command was dumping intentionally toxic chemicals and lying about it. And then, of course, this is their modus operandi. They deny claims, they deny the existence of the toxic dumping until it's inevitable, until it's undeniable, and then they'll just basically dole out these claims with such an extreme delay that a judge today said it will take 100 years to basically look at every claim because they're trying to deny the class action lump sum lawsuit. So it's insane. I mean, this is a 50-plus-year-old story, and there's still people that are sick and dying because of this cover-up. And they've never been held accountable, and they've never properly remediated any of these areas, Chris. Most of the Superfund sites in the US have either housed military installations or been used for military use. And they completely do not clean these sites up. They are left to rot and kill the people who live there. And this includes American citizens and service members.
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
Camp, it of course not only sickened and poisoned the Marines, but their families. It was, and as you said, it was incredibly prolonged because the military denied it. Just give us kind of, you do explore it in the film, but give us the kind of details of just how callous that abuse was.
Yeah, this is a thing that people can look at and say, oh, they didn't know any better, right? It was a long time ago. They certainly didn't know the toxicity. They didn't have any safe alternatives. Of course they did. Similarly to PFAS today, they have safe alternatives. They don't need to use PFAS. They choose to, Chris. They choose to. There's always safe alternatives. There's always
And when she's saying PFAS, that's there for forever chemicals that's in everything. Okay, that they're allowed to mass produce and put in everything. Okay, the chemicals that don't break down in your body. She's speaking about PFAS. Okay, and they make it seem as if they have to have it, they have to use it. It's essential. It's an essential chemical. Okay, as if the earth can't survive without PFAS. All right, which is that forever chemical, man.
Other things that they could be doing other than open burning, open detonation on all of these indigenous lands and desecrating these places. But when it comes to Camp Lejeune, this was a story that was happening for decades. I mean, they were dumping so much toxic waste because you look at just the maintenance of the military arsenal alone, the amount of toxic chemicals that are dumped into the ground in the open atmosphere just to clean these engine parts, to make these to make these engines mission ready to fly around in pointless patrols. So the amount of toxic waste that's accumulating every day, I mean, it's really unquantifiable. So the military was doing this, dumping the toxic waste into water wells at this Marine Corps base for years and years and years. So when the tests were done and they knew the wells were poisonous, instead of stopping the dumping, Chris, they continued. They continued for years and covered it up while Marines were drinking the water, bathing in the water. I mean, it was just like Red Hill, where they were literally bathing, cooking, cleaning in toxic water. And who died as a result of that? Of course, countless people. I mean, we're talking about 1 million people that were impacted by this, but the people who really were affected by this were the babies who didn't have the ability to deflect the carcinogens in their body. They didn't have the ability to do that. So we saw over 1,000 babies that were killed, stillborn, newborn infants, Chris. One of the women who goes back to these graves sees 3 born and died gravestones of children. Every 2 years, this woman would have a stillborn baby and probably thought it's her. She didn't know to blame the military brass. They didn't know. There was no accountability. There was no information given. Still to this day, you have people, activists, who are going out with cards saying, did you know about Camp Lejeune? Hey, you might be affected by this. I mean, it's absolutely insane to think of the lives lost, the destruction wrought on the families there, and actually no knowledge of what happened. Think about how many lives were ruined thinking that's you, and there was no answers for these people.
Let's talk about the nexus between our addiction to fossil fuels and imperialism, which I think is also a theme of the film.
Yeah, I mean, you look back at the existence of the US military as an institution, it's always been to extract, I mean, basically as the enforcement arm of extractivism. You look at the first extraterritorial bases, and they were always to protect coal, the infrastructure of coal. And then it became oil, right? When oil was discovered, that became cemented as the national security priority. It's always been there. It's just that we adopted the pretense of national security being human rights, democracy, freedom. It's always been explicitly about oil. But the military has always been the enforcement arm for global capital. So today, I mean, the military basically is pointed as this arch nemesis in the film. But really, it is just the consequence of an imperialist system that imposes the dictates of global capitalism around the world at the barrel of a nuclear armed gun. And the consequences are dire if you don't bow to the dictates of this system, Chris. So, you know, I always look at the perpetrators that have been rightly pointed at in terms of the global pollution that we are experiencing today, big oil, big ag. But who enforces these mechanisms? Who props up this system? Who does it? It's the US military. The oil companies have a military, and that's the US military. Now, you mentioned the fact
the oil companies have a military, and it's the US military. The oil companies have a military, and it's the US military. This is what we've been saying. Okay, and you look at the pattern or the reason that the American military goes to war has always been about oil and the interests of the elite bankers, man. Okay, Gaddafi, what was Gaddafi doing? He was coming with a currency backed by gold that was going to wreck the petrodollar. Okay, it came and got him. Saddam, you know, he stopped selling oil on the petrodollar. Came and got him. Hugo Chavez, okay, he went against the petrodollar. Got him out of there. Venezuela, selling oil outside the petrodollar. Got him out of there. Okay? Syria, you see? They wanted to be pro-Russian and pro-Iran. They ran Bashar out of there. Okay? They wanted to, Syrian oil was going to be sold outside the dollar. Nope, come here. American military. Okay? American military shows up where the interests of the elites and these oil companies, man. Okay? And then why do you think they went to Iran? Because people, you know, because this whole thing, oh, America got its own oil. Yeah, America does, but there are different kinds of oil. Okay? And for these data centers and the military, you need a lot of diesel. Okay? Now, when you go into the type of oil Iran has, let's get it real quick. You know? Now these things are starting to make a lot more sense. A lot more sense, man. And I pray it's making sense, you know, to you brothers, you few sisters as well. So I say the Iran oil good for diesel production. It says yes, Iranian crude oil is excellent for diesel production because Middle Eastern oil naturally yields a higher volume of distillates like diesel and jet fuel per barrel compared to the ultralight U.S. shale oil. Okay, and this is why the devil has been in the region, and built up all these bases, and you know, has a constant, military presence in that region because of the type of oil that comes from, all right, the Persian Gulf, all right, through the Strait of Hormuz. You see, it's a crude oil that's great for diesel and jet fuel, okay, which is the fuel, okay, of America's military, man. And now these data centers. You see, it said, however, whether it is good, whether it is good for a specific refiner depends heavily on the refiner's equipment due to oil's chemistry. It said the chemistry, why it works, it said the perfect middleweight. It said Iranian light crude sits in a desirable middle zone, while ultra light oils yield a lot of gasoline. Iranian crude oil naturally splits into incredibly high volume of gas or diesel and jet fuel during the initial boiling process, and this is why Iran is able to wage war for a long time. Okay, because it's the third largest producer of oil, and their oil is good for diesel and jet fuel. You see, so Iran is able to fuel their military, all right, domestically, man. You see, American military need that oil in the Gulf to fuel its military. You see? I said, then America uses so much goddamn oil because they the number one producer, but they're the number one user of oil. So they cancel themselves out. Okay? And that's why, okay, they launched these campaigns in this last campaign, okay, which regime change, because the thing is, if they would have got regime change, they wouldn't have had to, because Iran already has the refineries set up, okay, to refine, this, what they call sour crude, okay? So they already got the refinery set up, and if they could have just put a Western puppet in, they could have won, okay? But nah, they ran into prophecy, they ran into Ezekiel 38, okay? They ran into that wild boar that was prophesied to come forth with great power. You see? So yeah, man, let's play some more. All right.
If you look at just the institutional level of pollution in terms of the consumption of oil, that amounts to 150 countries, right? But it doesn't even scratch the surface of the emissions, because we're talking about US-led military emissions, which includes NATO. It includes the great power competition when the US continues to build up its armaments and withdraws from all these treaties. Well, of course, Russia and China will respond with their own military buildup. It all goes back to the impetus, to the imperial core and the belligerence and arrogance by the US. And then you see this reaction, this wave around the world reacting to the US belligerence. But you talk about the necessity of maintaining this arsenal and kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's, I think, really the key here, is the actual infrastructure of the fossil fuel domination. And that cyclical need to, get the natural resources, to pillage and plunder, to extract the last vestiges of natural gas and oil, to justify feeding the arsenal. To feed the oil dragon, you need to continue to grow and expand just to feed it. I mean, it really is a self-fulfilling prophecy in the worst way possible. It's collective suicide because the military itself is the main driver of this system. It is driving this unsustainable world that's dominated by fossil fuel. And then it uses the expanse to justify its own growth and expansion. And then you have people like Nancy Pelosi and these liberal politicians saying the military is the solution for the problem that it caused. So we're in the worst way possible, where there's no imagination or ingenuity outside of the system itself that has caused the very problem that we're facing, and they want it to be the solution for it.
Well, as the climate breaks down, as you have increasing numbers of climate refugees fleeing from the global south, as you have naval bases, and the military is planning for this, essentially buried underwater because of sea level rises. The very use, not only for their existence, but their expansion. Trump is not talking about a military budget of $1.5 trillion. I mean, it is this kind of very bizarre feedback loop.
Yeah, it is. And people talk about the notion of the imperial boomerang. Of course, for marginalized brown and black people, they've always felt the brunt of our colonial, the consequences of colonialism and imperialism. But I think for people who look like me in this country, they're seeing that this is inseparable. This boomerang effect of the consequences of having a global military empire that acts as a for-profit corporation. That when you have surplus weaponry that you need to continue to justify the next generation of these pointless vehicles, it either is handed off to entities like ISIS or the Taliban or to local police forces here in the US, which in turn brutalizes and subjugates its respective populations, like in Minneapolis. So it's a feedback loop in the worst way, in every possible way, that you need to continue to grow on a finite planet. You need to continue to justify the growth and the expanse. And so one fascinating thing about Trump that I've heard you articulate many times is the fact that he's completely dropped the mask. I mean, all of this is just very explicit. It's about the oil. It's Iran's the third largest oil producer in the world, and Venezuela's the first. I mean, this is insane. It's an overlap of just the law of the jungle, complete lawlessness, kind of harkening back to the days of Christopher Columbus, where it's just openly colonial, like Operation Total Extermination of Latin America. Any country that doesn't bow to this global system will be punished, will be destroyed unapologetically from the ruling class. So when we did this film, what's amazing about it was kind of the incubation period to get us somewhere like Trump. I mean, this was the neoliberal doctrine. This is the neoliberal order. This is what was deemed normal, right? This was the status quo, and this is a death spiral, Chris. So the film's really instructive because it shows us how we got here. It gives us answers to how things have gotten so bad. How it is possible that someone like Trump can get in and ratchet things up to this extent. Because he's not a king. He's not an anomaly. He's exactly the perfect encapsulation of the system that we have today.
I could talk all day long about my RV parks. We now own well over 20 RV parks. No banks, no credit.
Yeah, and I'll leave it there with that video. It's about another, I think, 15 minutes. About 13 minutes. Pretty good video though. But so yeah, let's get a few precepts, man. Okay. Let's get a few precepts. So let's go here to the book of Ecclesiastes. I've been getting this a lot lately too, man. Okay, a child in power. It's Ecclesiastes 10 and 16. It says, "Woe to you, O land, when your king is a child, and when your incompetent officials and priests feast in the mornings." Okay, because the earth is ran by a big child, man. Esau, and it's beginning with the elites, man. And the earth is just one big experiment for them, one continual experiment. Okay, and they have no care about the ripple effect of their actions in the world, man. You see, these devils, because you look at them like, oh, he got it all together. This nigga never had it all together, man. Because a lot of this shit that's happening is things that he's been doing and it's starting to backfire now. It's like you can eat terrible all throughout your 20s and not feel it, but as you get up in your 30s, mid-30s, you start feeling all them bad decisions from your 20s, man. Okay, and this is Esau's rulership, man. Okay, he's just a wild man with technology and You know, all these different scientists and think tanks and, you know, military might and, you know, missiles he can shoot and all these things affect the earth, man. Okay, but he doesn't care as long as he can parade himself around as, you know, this all knowing, you know, this guy like, you know, you see, as long as he can present to you some type of technology, like he done figured everything out and like they own to something, man. Nah, man, this nigga's a child in power, man. And he's destroying the earth, man. If this man was continue, he would destroy himself and the earth. The earth would be unlivable, man. Him trying to be the Most High. That's how far away from being the Most High he is. He would destroy the earth and himself, trying to be the Most High, man. Okay? He's incompetent, man. You see? The elites and these puppets that they set up in these leadership positions, especially here in America, they're incompetent, man. Woe to the old land, and the land is suffering from it. And ultimately, the land of America is going to be nuked, man. That's going to be the Lord putting a stop to this nigga, man. Okay? Let's go here to Ecclesiastes chapter 4. You know, but the earth suffers under the rulership of the wicked, man. You know, the land is polluted. Okay? The plants, the animals, you know, the people, the climate, everything is polluted, man. Okay? Ecclesiastes 4:13, it says, a poor yet wise youth is better than an old and foolish king, okay, who no longer knows how to receive instruction and counsel, friendly reproof or warning. Esau, this old foolish king, man. You know, they can't receive instruction and counsel. Okay, that's why I say a poor yet wise youth. And see, in the spirit, we're that poor wise youth, man, that the Lord is finna raise up the power. Okay, and that's why you go to verse 14, the spirit, 144, Ecclesiastes 4:14. It said, for the poor youth has used his wisdom and come out of prison to become king, even though he was born poor in his kingdom. Okay, and that's us, man. That's the hopeful elect. Lord will have that number, man. All right, and the first fruits of that hopeful elect are going to be joint heirs with Yahushua, man. Okay, we're that poor youth. Okay, but we have true wisdom. See, we have the true wisdom needed to run the earth, all right, in righteousness, man, where the earth is going to flourish. Okay, we have that wisdom that's needed for the earth, all right, to be replenished, man, to be restored. Okay, because even when you go into, all right, the return of Yahushua, you know, is mentioned with a great restoration. You see? But yeah, man, we those poor youth that's, all right, tapped into the wisdom, okay, of Yahweh Bashim al-Shah, man, that's going to restore the earth. You see, born in this wicked kingdom, you know, and when Yahweh Shah comes, he's going to restore us to power. This is the book of Acts, chapter 3. Okay, I started at 19. It says, repent ye therefore and be converted, that your sins may be blotted out, when the time of refreshing shall come from the presence of the Lord. Yeah, the time of refreshing, the presence of the Lord, Yahweh Shah. Okay, is going to be a refreshing to the planet Earth, man. You see, this nuclear destruction is going to do a lot of judging. Okay, it's going to do a lot of cleansing as well, man. You know, because fire is a purifier and cleanses, man. You know, so a lot of pollutants are going to be purified and cleansed with this nuclear destruction as well. Okay, and it's going to be at the presence of Yahushua. It's going to be a great refreshing. You see, and it says, and he shall send Yahushua Hamashiach, which before was preached unto you, whom the heaven must receive until the times of restitution of all things, man. The sons of God being restored back to power. Okay. the earth being put, in order. You see, it says, which the Most High has spoken by the mouth of all his holy prophets since the world began. Okay, and this was always the Lord's plan. Okay, the Lord's going to follow the worst rulership of Esau. Okay, with the everlasting righteous rulership, okay, of Israel, beginning with Yahweh Shai, man. Which is going to restore all things. You see? And that's why, we got to get it. We'll end it here, Revelation 11:18. Okay. These are the times, this is where we at. This is going to be fulfilled, soon. Revelation 11:18 says, the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give reward unto thy servants, the prophets, and to the saints, and them that fear thy name, small and great, and shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth, man. So we're in the time where the prophets are finally going to get their reward, being joint heirs with Yahweh Shai, man. Being restored back, to the authority, to that glory they had in the heavens, which is going to play out in the earth, man. Okay, to the saints and them that fear thy name, small and great, the rest of the 1/3. Okay, they're going to be rewarded with immortality, man. You see, abundance and much more. You see, it says, and should destroy them which destroy the earth, which is Esau, man. Ain't no doubt about it when it comes to who's destroying the earth, man. They don't have to be figured out, man. Okay, so yeah, we'll leave it there, Lord will. You brothers, all right, and you few sisters edified once again. I want to give all praise and glory unto Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem Rakakwadash, and double honors unto the apostles and the elders, GMS, who rule well, teach well, being great examples towards younger brothers, and peace and blessings, salutation, hopefully. Shalom.